Good morning, guys. It is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. This is Bathrobe Business. I'm Georgi Oganov. I got my coffee. I'm very groggy, but I got the news. So, one sec. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm going to start with EVs. There's a lot going on in the EV market, specifically in China. I know I like to stick to U.S. news, but with EVs being kind of a global market now, I think it's very worth talking about what's going on in China because they're definitely spearheading EVs much more aggressively than we are in the United States. So here's an example. We've talked about this before. This isn't new news if you watch my channel. Xiaomi, they're a cell phone manufacturer in China. They've launched their EV, and they already have about 50,000 cars in pre-order. Actually, I lie. They got 50,000 cars in pre-order in 27 minutes when their website launched. Now, they're saying that they've got about a 5-month delivery schedule of their first car. It's called the SU7. It's supposed to be the latest and greatest. It's going to have better charging than a Tesla, longer range, etc., etc. That I don't know about, but they are actually doing fairly well. Obviously, BYD is still the champ, right? If you know anything about Chinese EV markets, BYD is the Mac Daddy of God. That sounds corny. They are the leader of Chinese car manufacturers. They're the ones that beat out Tesla last year. However, they just had a very disappointing quarter where their sales fell 43% to their last quarter in 2023. And I'm not getting specifics as to why. I'm wondering if the quality isn't quite what people are anticipating, and that's why people are turning away from BYD and looking at Teslas again. So we'll see what the next quarter brings, but Tesla's situation might not be as bleak as everybody thinks. But yeah, Xiaomi, I'll give you a couple other points about it. They're priced at $4,000 less than the Model S. Than the Model 3. So they're going in direct competition with Tesla, not in direct competition with other manufacturers in the market. That's definitely, I think, coming from the CCP and the government. They don't want direct competition between the brands right now. They want competition between U.S. and Chinese brands. Huawei has also got their own smart car or own electric car called Aito, and it only delivered about 31,000 in March. So even their sales aren't that great either. In addition, here domestically, Rivian missed their production goals drastically. So they're probably going to have a very poor quarter simply because they very badly missed their EV targets and production goals. Honestly, I think Rivian is maybe the best position of any EV because let's be honest, they're just an Amazon car. That's really their market. Every single Amazon truck you see is a Rivian. So no matter what happens, Rivian's going to exist. I feel like they're not competing in the real car market at large. They're really just a delivery car for Amazon, and I think it makes complete sense. If you're Amazon and you need delivery trucks, why not own your own? So I don't consider them a real car company. I don't think they compete in the public space. I also think they are the ugliest goddamn cars I see on the market. I mean, the Cybertruck is ugly, but I think the Rivians are just horrendous looking cars. If those fellow millennials of mine, if you guys remember Mudkip, Google Mudkip Pokemon and look at the photo of a Rivian, and I think they're the exact same thing. I think the CEO or designer of Rivian looked at Mudkip and said, I want an electric car that looks just like that. So that's my 2 cents. Next story I'm going to talk about is U.S. debt. So U.S. debt is getting to concerning levels, at least to a point where people are noticing these levels. So Bloomberg economists ran a million forecast simulation on the U.S. debt outlook, and 88% of them showed that it's an unsustainable path. So this isn't new. This is something that I've talked about on the channel. This is something a lot of people have talked about over the years. And it's an election season, so that's why everybody's talking about it again. Debt is an issue. It's definitely an issue because currently we are pretty much 1-to-1 debt to GDP. According to this latest study of the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, we are on track to be anywhere between 116 and 123% of GDP by 2034. So the latest calls of alarm come from the CBO, which is a big voice because the Congressional Budget Office is a nonpartisan, essentially accounting firm for the U.S. government. And they're saying that we are on a path to about 123% debt to GDP ratio in the next 10 years. It's definitely concerning. I've talked about this as well. I think our debt has become a joke. It's overblown. However, I don't think this is going to change. Just to give you a comparison, Japan, which is more or less a very strong functioning economy, their government debt to GDP is 263%. So double and then some. So here you have an economy that is much smaller than ours, but is still considered a sizable economy. I think they're still considered third largest or fourth largest in the world. And their government debt to GDP is 263%. So I think that gives the U.S. government precedent to say, well, if Japan can do it, why can't the U.S. government do it? Unfortunately, I think it will. And I think this is going to be especially difficult and especially complicated as we're heading into the next coming decades because we're going to see slower growth in the economy because of demographics, because of competition from abroad. We're going to be seeing more inflation, and we're going to be seeing boomers retiring. They're already retiring, but more and more boomers leaving the market, and a much smaller subset of Xers, millennials, and Zers that are going to be coming to the fold that just simply aren't large enough to be able to produce as great of a GDP. This is kind of coming from the school of Peter Zion, but I think he's totally right. When you've got a class of people that have been holding up the economy for 70 years, the boomers, and now they're retiring and eventually going to be passing, I don't see how you sustain powerful GDP with a much smaller productive population. We'll see, obviously, AI can change that, automation can change it. A lot of this is based off of productivity. We can get greater productivity. However, one thing to consider is the United States isn't a manufacturing country like China is, or like we used to be. We're primarily a service economy, a financial economy, and so you can't really make a lot of productivity gains in those types of industries. If we did come back and reindustrialize, there could be talk of growth in GDP, but I think even a lot of that talk is just really political theater because even though we could be leaving China for reshoring, a lot of it is just moving into Mexico. Last year was the first time Mexico's trade with the United States surpassed that of China, but I believe it was 70 billion, and that number is growing, right? We're offshoring a lot into Mexico. We're not offshoring necessarily to China, but we're going into Mexico heavily. Just a couple of days ago, I reported how the company Masterlock is moving partly from the Midwest to a facility in South Carolina and then again into Mexico. So this is going to be a real issue to look at in the future, and I don't have a good answer of what we should do. Well, I do have a good answer of what we should do. We should not be spending more money than we produce, but I don't think that this is going to change because it doesn't matter which party is in Congress. It's going to be spend, spend, spend. So it's something that we really need to consider and something we need to put pressure on because I don't know how you can sustain this in the next coming decades as we're going to probably see a drop in GDP one way or another. The only thing that could hold it would be growth in asset prices and inflation. That's the only thing that could keep GDP high. We're essentially going to be printing money in order to print money. So that's my 2 cents. Last story I'm going to cover is there's a new app out there. It's going up against TikTok and Amazon directly. So this is an app called Flip. So what they're trying to do is take the virality of TikTok along with the consumer's department store style of Amazon and combine them into one. So essentially this is a shopping site that is based entirely on user reviews where the users will make TikToks of the product. So for example, if I have this computer mouse, I make a video of myself reviewing the computer mouse, and then other people can see it and purchase that product. So essentially it's using social media and virality in a way to harness sales of actual products and goods. It's essentially what TikTok has already done, but TikTok is primarily a social media app, quote unquote. I would say it's a video sharing app, closer to YouTube, but that's their primary goal, whereas this is just focused entirely on e-commerce. One of the things that is a little different is they're giving away cash at record levels. So essentially, if I made a TikTok about this mouse, that gives you the idea of how pervasive TikTok is becoming. I'm using it as a verb. So if I make a TikTok about this mouse and you go out and you buy this mouse based on my review, I get money back for that. So there are influencers on this app that are currently making money from it. Nothing major, but it is a starting app, and it is something that I think a lot of influencers are going to be doing if it's worthwhile. And every time you post a review and somebody buys something based off that review, you get a kickback. We'll see if this catches on. I think this is a little gimmicky, honestly. I even don't like the name Flip. It seems very generic. If you just Google Flip, it's not the first result that comes up because it's such a simple word. I feel like TikTok is a bit more unique. Klarna, an app I talk about often, is a little bit more unique. Amazon is a little bit more unique. Flip, to me, just feels very generic. But maybe that's just because I've never heard of it before. So just something to consider is an app that is out there. I might try it myself, but they are going head-to-head with the giants. That's pretty much it. Those are the only stories I have of the day. I will be back tomorrow. Yesterday was the start of the second week of my latest business acquisition. Not much to report. It was kind of a slow, boring day, so I'm not going to talk much about it. But I'll be back tomorrow, and if there's anything worth reporting, I will let you guys know. I hope you have a productive day, and I'll see you in the morning.